Wherefore, Series 3, Episode 43. This is not an episode entirely about the incident when the wizard Wigston spanks an aubergine in front of Professor Bob Fry. Also, the aubergine in this scenario is not a euphemism and has nothing to do with how the young people deploy aubergine emojis. But enough of this. It is simply the context framing a conversation. Wigston is concerned about what would happen if time-travelling wizards decided to thwart the power of the Stroud Valleys, however many there really are, by going back to the last ice age and messing with the Frome. It is not an irrational fear. At one point Stroud had a time-travelling charity shop, and no one really understood how it worked, or why it went away, or what it did in the meantime. Like all wizards, Wigston worries about what other wizards might get up to. Without the Frome flowing west to meet the Severn, there would be no main Frome valley in which Stroud could grow and develop. The escarpment might be almost continuous from Haresfield to Dursley. The Nailsworth, Painswick and Slad streams would probably still join up and might form a much smaller valley, cutting through the escarpment to join the Severn as the existing Frome does. But without the Frome, where Stroud is now, would be upland Cotswolds. It is a sobering thought. Professor Bob Fry points out that it may not be possible to change the past in so thorough a way. He is right about this. The weave will tolerate minor tinkerings, but once a major pattern has been set, you can't change it. All you can do is create an alternate timeline, which you are then personally stuck in. Time travellers go back to their own special futures in which their timeline plays out, but they haven't really altered things for anyone who was in the previous timeline, which continues unmolested. Think of it as having started a whole new piece of cloth, like tacking a flap onto an existing garment. It is my understanding that people who time travel a lot in a bid to change history end up in increasingly tiny streams of alternate reality, where things get weirder and ever more unstable, and that eventually, if they mess about too much, the spiders who live in the weave will feel obliged to eat them. Professor Bob Fry is a Renaissance man with both depth and breadth to his knowledge. He speculates aloud about the Frome. Well, Wigston, in the immediate post-glacial period, things were much less definite in terms of geomorphology. It would not have taken much for the young Frome to deviate from its source above Brimpsfield a few hundred yards to flow east and become a tributary of the Thames. Instead, it trickled south until it got to Sapperton, where it took a sudden west turn to form the Frome Valley, all the way to Stroud and beyond. I suspect that it was an ambitious young river, determined to make its own mark, and not content with being a mere Thames tributary like the servile River Churn. Wigston wonders if the Sapperton Tunnel was actually a plot to redirect the Frome through Sapperton Hill and eastward to the Thames, thus depriving Stroud of its very Stroudiness. It is not an unreasonable line of thought. Wigston is sensitive to magic, and even as he is pondering about these things, a rather malevolent wizard stands on Sapperton Hill and goes through the kinds of weird gestures and obscure dance routines some wizards feel obliged to employ while doing their thing. There is a whole school of time travel magic based on doing a popular dance from the period you wish to go back to. This makes it fairly easy to travel to the 1980s and singularly difficult to visit the last ice age. Back he goes, turning his current now into a much colder sort of now. Unlike some time travellers, our current example has done his research and is wearing thermal underwear, insulated trousers and other such garments. He's sweaty, having departed from a much warmer day, but it was a good choice. The wind chill is horrific in the now he currently occupies. He has arrived early enough for the Frome not to exist. It has taken him a few tries to achieve this. Hopping back for a look is a low-risk activity, and so he has experienced no difficulties so far. With further arm waving and a dance routine that looks suspiciously like the steps from Wigfield's early 90s hit Saturday Night, he continues. But then, Wigfield was a pioneer in dance-based time travel, which is not a well-known fact. The song is a powerful magical node, allowing people to hone in on the early 90s, as well as being able to adapt it for visiting other eras. It's surprisingly effective for prehistoric forays because it does in fact come very close to a popular mating dance from the era and is suitable for performers who are wearing a great deal of animal fur and don't have a large space to move around in. It isn't, however, an especially good choice of dance for trying to start a conversation with a potential river. Although it's probably better than river dance, to be fair. The essence of dance-based magic is resonance. If one thing feels like another, connections can be made across time and space. The repertoire of dances suitable for time travel doesn't actually result in anything especially relevant to animistic conversations in deep prehistory. This is not a skill set anyone can teach you, and it is why most time travelers focus on human-related stuff, where having the same sort of body goes a long way towards creating resonance. The water spirit that will one day become the frame is barely aware of the dancing wizard and is in no way persuaded to head towards the Thames. It is a young being, full of its own ideas, and if anything, the pressure to go east makes it even more determined to find a good route westwards. He does, however, succeed in giving strange, sexy feelings to a passing elk, whose amorous intentions result in a broken leg and no way of dancing back to the 21st century. He will go on to create his own pocket timeline in which prehistoric people find him wounded and yet strangely well wrapped, and who subsequently develop a peculiar religious cult based on the many layers of trousers and change the course of human history as we know it. It's a very niche alternative universe, and we need pay it no further attention. Meanwhile, the frame continues west, as it has always done, and has no interest whatsoever in anything any wizard would prefer it to be doing.